everybody, welcome to the studio. It's Monday morning here at Orange Easel, and we started something last week. I thought I'd see if I continue it this week. Last week I said I was going to make this a habit. I'm pretty proud of myself for 2 weeks in a row. So I'm sharing with you on Monday mornings our storytime curriculum. Now we do storytime classes here in the studio 3 times a week online and 4 times a week in person. So we have lots of different stories that we do and lots of different curriculums. I love our Zoom ones because it's so accessible for home artists, right? Stuff we do in the studio, a lot of times we're relying on station play and centers and lots of materials, sometimes a little bit of mess. But the stuff that we do here on Zoom is designed for our home artists. And so it's a lot of times this is stuff that you have at your house already. It's nothing fancy. It's not super duper messy. And a lot of times it's stuff the kids can do by themselves. So we read a book today called Nico Draws a Feeling. And I wish I had it to show you, but I actually got it as an ebook from our library. That's one of the things I started doing with the pandemic was making sure I used a lot of ebooks and using our library source instead of purchasing books off Amazon, which has been amazing. So if you haven't checked out your library for ebooks, definitely check them out. But it's called Nico Draws a Feeling. And it's about a little boy who makes abstract art, right? So he draws not the sun, but he draws the warmth of the sun. And he draws not the bird building a nest, but the hard work. And he draws not the ice cream truck, but the ring-a-ling-a-ling of the ice cream truck. And nobody gets him. They're like, I don't get it. What? Where's the bird? Where's the nest? Where's the truck? I don't see a bell. And he gets a little bit frustrated, and he ends up meeting a friend along the way who is on his same wavelength. And so they share a connection through their art, and they become friends. So it's a really great way to explore abstract art and the concept of abstract art as opposed to something concrete. And so we did some abstract art today in my storytime class, and I thought I would share it with you. So supply-wise, in order to do this, you're going to need a spray bottle or a dropper or a sponge. We'll get to some alternatives if you don't have a spray bottle, okay? But I'm going to use a spray bottle today. I've got some paper. I cut it a little bit smaller just because it's better for the camera view. But you can use any size piece of paper. It's a little bit heavier than like a drawing paper. It's not a watercolor paper, although you could use watercolor paper or like a multimedia or mixed media paper. This is probably about the weight of a construction paper, but not quite as cloth-like. It's a little bit stiffer, and it doesn't have quite the same tooth or the texture of a construction paper. And if you want the link of our multimedia paper that we use with our young kids, I can get you that. So I got that. I've also got some aluminum foil and some markers. All right. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. Let me show you the examples I did for class today. When we did our class today, the first thing we did was draw, and the next thing we did was print. So we talked about drawing feelings. You know, what would joy feel like? What would it look like on paper? Would it be straight lines? Would it be curvy lines? Would it be shapes, or would it be just lines? And so I drew what I thought joy looked like in my Sharpie marker. And then I drew what I thought frustration would look like. And then I drew what I thought sadness or loneliness would feel like. So we had a really great discussion in our class about that. I think that the drawing with the Sharpies is not necessary for this lesson. So if you got really young ones, you might skip straight to the printmaking because I feel like it's a lot more engaging for the young ones. This is a that's a lot of thinking to figure that out. And starting with just the black and white you might get them turned off just a little bit. So maybe start with the printmaking if you've got young ones, okay? Because you can always do the drawing after you've done the printmaking. I actually did both. I drew, I printed, and then I drew some more because it dried during the time that we were in class. You can do it in any order that you want. So let me show you the printmaking part because I think that's the coolest, all right? So here's my foil, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my washable markers to color on my foil. And you can color in any way that you want to. I told the kids that I was going to lay my marker down. I was going to use the broad side of my marker to lay big amounts of color in splotches. At this point, I was doing my joy picture, and I wanted it to have bright, vibrant, joyful colors. And, you know, which colors give you joy? Which colors represent joy for you? And so lots of great things to talk about, or, you know, just let them have fun with the process. So if I put a whole bunch of different colors here on my page, And they could experiment with doing, squiggles and circles as opposed to patches. I'm going to do mine kind of in patches. You could also do it in stripes. How cool would that be, right? Like a red stripe and then a green stripe and then a blue stripe. And then, because when we get this wet and we print on it, it does maintain some of our pattern. This is so processed, you guys. A lot of our kids had fun just experimenting with, what happens if I get it really wet? What happens if I only get it a little bit wet? What happens if I draw on top of wet foil? What happens if, and so there's a lot of discovery that can happen here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our spray bottle. We're going to get this wet. And like I said, the degree of wetness that you do will determine your outcome. So when I did these ones, you can kind of see my print, kind of how dry it is, right? Like there's not a lot of ink. You can almost still see like a texture or a pebbly pattern on it. And then I had someone in my class who got it really, really wet, and she was like, you should try it. So I did, and look how fun that is when it's really, really wet. So you can experiment with those kinds of things. I'm going to get it moderately wet here with my spray bottle. We had to have a talk in our art class today about not spraying the devices because, we're on Zoom. So, important things. So I'll give it a little bit of a spray. Now, if you don't have the spray bottle, you could use a dropper. You could also use a paintbrush or a sponge and get your paper wet instead of the foil, okay? And I'm going to go ahead. You can see it kind of swirling down here. Can't you? Hang on. Go back this way. Hang on. There it is. All right, and we're going to print it. So the paper goes down, and we apply some pressure to it. If you're using just a really thin drawing paper, you might end up with it not absorbing all of your color, or it might soak through. So you might have to experiment with, or like a paper that's really slick. Don't use a paper that's really slick, that has a coating on it. All right, let's pull it up and see what we got. You ready? How fun is that for an abstract painting or printing technique? Now, I didn't do any of my Sharpie marker on top of it because I wanted to keep this video kind of short, right? But you can draw before you print, or you can draw after you print. This is still really wet, so I would probably wait until it dried before I drew on it. Fortunately, in my class, we had lots of time to discuss and chit-chat, so there was plenty of time for it to dry, and it dries pretty quickly too. So permanent marker, if you're going to draw first and then print so that it doesn't ooze on you. Although, maybe one thing you could experiment with is if you draw with washable marker and print, what does that do to your drawing? I don't know. All right, so there is a really great abstract painting. It's not really painting, it's a printing, abstract printing technique for your kids to explore this morning or later this week. I know in Kansas City we got some cold weather coming, so maybe you're looking for some indoor art activities. This would be a good one. The kids can print paper after paper after paper and just keep this paper even if they don't turn it into a drawing, because it makes wonderful collages or paper to draw on later. So, like I said, the book we read with this one was called Nico Draws a Feeling. For all of my teachers out there who might be looking to tie in literacy to an abstract art lesson, it's a good one. So have a wonderful rest of your Monday, everybody, and I'll chat with you next Monday.